a trophy.
Oh, Bob.
We've had an event.
It's been a thing. It's been a bit of a thing. Special shout out to the fine people at GoPro for making high quality, high octane action cameras.
If you want to reach out for a sponsorship, our ears are open.
Yeah. Hey, Sony. I like the PlayStation. We all like the PlayStation. I love your cameras, so get in touch. Anyway, welcome to another fine, artisanally crafted episode
Everyone.
of Midlife Krisis. Uncle Bob, it is so nice to see you here in the dojo.
We're back.
We're back, and we're ready, and we're better than ever, and spirits are high.
Optimism.
And optimism is the theme of the day.
Yeah.
So, first thing I'm going to point out is we are no longer encumbered by microphone stands in front of us, as you can see.
Whoa!
So that's a neat thing. That's a cool feature.
Continue to upgrade.
Yes. Audio. Which is a key, important element of the whole process.
One of two.
One of two. In an audio-visual medium, we're batting 1,000 on 50% of the whole thing. So there we have it. Okay, I'll try to rein us in. I'll try to put the sun back into the sky. And Bob? Why don't you lay the fucking table?
Yeah.
What is today's topic?
This was my idea.
Indeed.
Today's topic is hype.
Whoa! Oh God! Yeah. Oh! See, the best part of these microphones is I can do things like this. I can walk around.
Oh, but now I'm the only one on camera.
You'll be fine. Trust me.
Hello,
it's gonna be
everyone.
fine.
Oh.
It's gonna be fine.
I'm having a good time. Not.
Okay, let's do that again. What's the episode about?
Hype!
Yeah! Worth it. Worth it. That's what I'm saying. Everything that we just did was worth it.
Yep.
Okay, so hype. Hype in video games. It is like a peanut butter and chocolate operation. You don't have one without the other, in my opinion. And it goes back to, dare I say this, it goes back to the Atari 2600 game, E.T.
Okay, yeah.
Because
I guess that's where it would start.
E.T., biggest goddamn movie of the 80s, or one of them.
Yeah.
Atari would air commercials about like this kid who like wakes up early and he goes out and he sees the Christmas tree and he sees a Santa Claus a E.T. dressed up as Santa Claus. And then it's like this whole thing, and they bombarded kids with that ad. It was a huge deal. Game comes out, legendary piece of shit. Legendary piece of shit. Now, I'll argue that there are worse games than E.T.
Okay, that's...
There absolutely are worse games than E.T.
I like that your defense of E.T. is by simply pointing out that it's not literally the worst game ever.
Yes. That is exactly what I'm trying to do here. It is literally not the worst game of all time.
Okay.
Certainly in that group of it gets that rap as being one of the worst games of all time.
Is it the worst high-profile game of all time?
So I think for me, I would go back and forth between E.T. and Pac-Man for the 2600 are legendary pieces of shit.
Yeah.
E.T. At least E.T. is like. It's super obtuse and that's saying something for Atari 2600 games because they're all fucking obtuse. Like they're all like, you really have to bend your imagination to like be able to go along with what's happening. But that one is like another step entirely. Like it's nuts. We'll birdwalk a little bit here on that game, but have you played ET for 2600 at all?
No, but I watched a YouTube video of the playthrough.
Okay.
And it looks like hot garbage.
Yeah. But again, look, Atari 2600 games, since neither of you have the benefit of having a super long silver ponytail, and that is a challenge.
Did you say neither of you?
Neither. I said us.
You said neither of you.
Okay, well, neither of you have the benefits of silver ponytails.
The royal we.
The royal we. Thank you. And it's about time we start referring to ourselves as the royal we. But that's not our deal. Like I got a 2600 as a hand-me-down as like a 4-year-old. And so like I fell in love with video games with that thing.
Yeah.
But I had nothing else to really compare it to at the
I
time.
had in television around the same time.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know people like they have. I think that's a common story. Like you got a hand-me-down Atari or a ColecoVision in television, what have you. That generation of video games, they were plentiful. They were around because of the crash, and so like you could go buy these things from like a Sprouse. Shout out to my boys at Sprouse Ritz. You could buy one of those for like $20 and like a garbage bag full of games. And I think a lot of people that have early gaming memories because of that stuff. So, but the games are they haven't aged well. I think is fair to say.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
I think that's fair, and a lot of people will accept that. But going back to E.T. and Pac-Man, like they were so hyped up, and Pac-Man was like the biggest game in the world in the arcades. Obviously,
Yeah.
Pac-Man. The arcade version of Pac-Man fucking holds up incredibly well.
Well, Miss Pac-Man especially.
Yeah. I vastly prefer Miss Pac-Man just because the mazes change, but Pac-Man in and of itself it holds up amazingly well.
It does.
But that 2600 version of the game, which like resembles it, like it looks like Pac-Man, but plays like shit, and like the dots have been replaced by the dashes and all that stuff, and it has like this really headache-inducing color deal where it's like it's like a hot cyan and pink, and it just kind of gives you eye strain, which is never a fun thing. But both of those games were hyped to the moon and back, and very famously kind of led to Atari. Well, one of many things, but it led to Atari. Excuse me. It led to Atari and the video game market in general crashing.
Well, and for our viewers and listeners who aren't aware, talk about what happened with all those unsold ET carts because of all the hype. Massive hype. The game is a piece of crap. It doesn't sell what they thought it was going to sell.
Right. Yes.
And
okay, so this was an urban legend for many, many years until it was proven to be the truth, which is super cool.
Yeah.
But Atari had warehouses full of dead stock, like millions of copies of Pac-Man and E.T. and a bunch of other stuff too. But the cost of storing all this stuff in warehouse space when they're like eating shit business-wise, it didn't make any sense. So they came up with this idea and I guess like, look, I don't know, whatever you want, like in consumer electronics, I don't know if this has ever happened before or since this happened, but it's really interesting that it did happen, and maybe it does. Maybe like there's a landfill filled of like Zenith VCRs or something. But I don't know if that exists. I'd like to see that. But anyway, Atari goes and they send truckloads of this stuff into a landfill in New Mexico.
Right.
And then they not only do they bury this stuff, but they encase it in concrete. It's just like, why are we doing this? But again, they did it. And then there was very loose record keeping of this stuff. And so that's how it became like, obviously the story got out. I'm assuming somebody at Atari talked about it, or someone's cool uncle had the story or whatever it was. But it just kind of stayed low profile until the advent of the internet, and the story kind of got out there. And then it snowballed and became this thing. And then there was a really good documentary made. I think it's called Game Over, if I'm remembering it the right one, but it's all about Atari. And in that documentary, they find the actual landfill. They go and they commission a dig, and sure as shit, it's real. It's out there.
That's so great.
And they found a bunch of copies of Pac-Man and E.T. They also found hardware. There were systems there too.
Oh, wow.
But it was mainly unsold software.
It makes sense that they would keep it hush-hush. Not only is it incredibly embarrassing for the company, but
that's the main
also...
reason.
I'm assuming they didn't get a permit from the government to just go bury a bunch of crap in the middle of the desert.
It makes for a better story that they just said they went rogue and did it. And they said, "Fuck it, we're Atari, dude. We gotta get rid of this stuff."
It was 1983.
Exactly.
So it's like we're right in the wheelhouse.
They're pulling up on their DeLoreans and fucking just going nuts. So here's another thing while we're on the subject. And speaking of hype, the genius brain trust at Atari at the time thought that it would be a good idea to produce more copies of E.T. than there were systems in the home.
Yeah.
Which is like, what the fuck are you doing? Yeah. Do you think that people are just going to like buy a game and look at it?
No, I think what they thought is people will give the game to people who don't have Ataris, and then they'll go out and buy Ataris.
Because it's just
happy
so
birthday.
Good.
Here's the game. Now you got to go buy the
Now you got to go
spend
$200.
Yeah, it's like when your toys won't have batteries, except it's like the reverse of
Yeah.
that. You get you're getting the batteries, but not the toy.
And it's far worse. Because batteries in the 80s, I assume, costed like a dime or something.
Yeah.
But an Atari was like $200. In 80s money, by the way. Yeah. So that's like, adjust for inflation, is like $600 or something insane. Didn't work. That little model didn't work, as it turns out.
Hype.
Yeah, hype. Okay, so that I think is a great history lesson in terms of like where hype can go all the way wrong on a video game.
Yeah.
Give me a personal example, and I'll give you one where hype goes all the way right.
Well, you're putting me on the spot, but I think the most recent example isn't actually my personal example, but Elden Ring seems like that is. I will play it soon. It's going to happen, and then I will report back to you. But
in two more presidencies, you will definitely get around to it. You know, DLC is coming.
I know. I'm timing me playing it to the DLC release, and I think I have it timed correctly. But that is the game that I remember everybody being like extremely hyped about. The fact that George R.R. Martin was involved, the fact that it was the culmination of all the Miyazaki gameplay innovations that From Software had been doing. And then it actually ended up being Game of the Year along with God of War Ragnarok.
I believe I've said it on this show. I'll say it again. I think Elden Ring is like, it's the out of this entire generation, PS5 and the Series X and all that stuff. Yeah. It's the game that has blown me away the most.
You've described it as the game that feels the most next gen of all the games that have come out, which is a really good compliment for the game.
Yeah.
That everything else just feels like it could have appeared on PS4, but this is the one thing that feels next gen. So,
and it's really more about, to me, it's more about like a bunch of smaller pieces coming together perfectly to create this like wonderful epic experience. So it's like, it's probably not the most graphically impressive game out there. Probably doesn't have like the best of any one particular category, but all the pieces together make this like just spectacular experience. And I forget who said this, so I'm ripping this off. I wish I could give credit to the person who said it, but someone said that it's like playing an actual sequel to Breath of the Wild, which like that to me is like, yeah, it kind of is, because it took. Obviously, it's very, like so many fucking games this generation, it was inspired by Breath of the Wild. But it took those things and then, mashed it together with the Souls series and then just created this insane, wonderful experience that I haven't played a game this generation before or since that has given me those types of feelings of like grandiosity and all that good stuff. So it's the best game of this generation, and I think that's more than likely going to stay that way, I think.
There's nothing on the horizon unless they want to announce Last of Us 3 and have that come out have it be as good.
Even that, like I think Naughty Dog games are great. We've talked about this ad nauseum, and we know why that they're great. But I do think that in light of how they kind of shit the bed with like making the online version and how that got canceled and all that stuff, we talked about it on a recent episode about that.
The botched first game.
Yeah, like I don't know how realistic it is for them to recover. And like to me, it's almost like they have to hype up a new thing to be able to get it. And I just don't think that's in the cards, because Last of Us, the show is super popular, the games are super popular. This fucking stupid business known as the video game industry is playing it as safe, irresponsibly safe when it comes to these games as possible, because they cost so much fucking money and all those stupid things. So, but I mean, like, I'm genuinely not hyped to play a Last of Us sequel. Like, I'm sure it'd be good and it'd be fine and all that stuff, but like, I'd be so much more hyped for them to do something entirely new. But I just don't think.
Well, they're also rumored to be doing that too. So.
Well, yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
It is nice that Elden Ring actually lived up to the hype, because it feels like, I'll give you my ratio. My ratio is for every 10 things that are hyped or overhyped or whatever, somewhere between 8 and 9 of them don't live up to the hype. In fact, even if they're good, they don't quite live up to the hype.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And Elden Ring would be the one that did, if not exceeded it. And that's a pretty rare event. So, this episode, I want to do this episode on hype because I thought recently about, actually what inspired this episode is recently the sequel to Slay the Spire, one of my favorite games ever, was announced. It was just within the last week. Slay the Spire, in my opinion, basically invented the card battler, the PvE card battler genre that is very, very popular now. So as soon as I saw that, they didn't show any gameplay. And I was like, man, I cannot wait for this. And they're like, oh, we're going to have early access 2025. So I get mad because it's that thing that you and I hate when they're announcing a year from now you'll get the alpha version of the game, and then 3 years from now you'll get the actual game. And I was so annoyed about that, and then I started going over in my head like the pros and cons of hype, because when you use the word hype, there's typically sort of a negative connotation with it. Like it's marketing and things don't live up to the hype, and then there's these famous disasters like what you described with the ET episode. But man, every now and then, it's sort of like people get it right. And then also, when you're young, hype is like a really, really important part of the coming of age experience that you and I went through. My son's going through it right now with Fortnite. Fortnite announces a new patch and they do in-game stuff for it. And he's like literally twitching with anticipation for the new thing to come out. And then it comes out and it's disappointing. And it's like, well,
this is what happens. This is what happens.
Glad you're learning this at 8 years old, because I learned it at around 14. Maybe.
So I learned it at 8 years old. In the maybe the best example of it ever, but Sonic Tuesday, my friend. So Sonic the Hedgehog obviously was this like huge cultural touchstone. So as a sidebar, talking about Sonic, I do think that Sonic 1 and Sonic 2, fantastic games. Like they're wonderful. The soundtrack's great. Everything's fun. It really shows the speed. And then I think the series starts to shit the bed with Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles. I only want to say this now publicly because I think it's fun to upset Sonic fans. So I've done that. Mission accomplished. But, so Sonic 1 was literally a Mario killer. Like, the way it was marketed, geniusly marketed about how, like, they showed Mario, like, just plugging along, and then here's Sonic just fucking tearing ass, right?
It became the mascot of the system, based off that.
And like Sega had, this wasn't their first rodeo in attempting to make a mascot. Shout out to the fallen hero known as Alex Kidd. But like they laid the table beautifully with Sonic, and then of course, like it's the #1 selling game for Sega. It became the pack-in that Christmas 1991 is when. They started, it was 92, I believe, is when they started packing in Sonic with Genesis. And, like, that's the first year where they caught up sales-wise with Super Nintendo. Then the following year, they actually outsold the Super Nintendo. So it's, like, pretty fucking big deal.
What's up, YouTube? It's your boy. Oh, God, back with another Laserdisc review. Little bit of housekeeping. I'm still very much on the run. I think I'm in Oregon, but I'm not 100%. I did find this wonderful leapfrog camera, right? But the issue is that it only records in 30-second clips. So I will need to go to a public library to edit these clips together for you, the Laserdisc family. Whoop! Okay, so another little bit of housekeeping here is that I actually don't have any more Laserdiscs because I live outside primarily, and I met a really cool guy named Doug who taught me if I breathe in paint, makes all the problems in my life just kind of disappear. So I've been doing a lot of that, and I haven't been doing very many purchasing or acquirements of Laserdiscs. But I would like to maybe start off today by doing like theory. So these are theory reviews of Laserdiscs that I would like to buy one. So the first one up for today is going to be Maverick, starring Mel Gibson. It's a movie about gambling in the Old West and having a lot of fun with your friends. And Mel Gibson is a figure who's been in a lot of Laserdiscs, and when I think back to my home collection, I didn't own any Mel Gibson discs. Owning a Mel Gibson disc would be maybe one of the first things that I want to do when I get back on top of my feet and have my life going in a forward trajectory like I want to. But for now, it's about survival and, of course, breathing in paint, just like Doug taught me, to make everything smoother and easier to deal with. So in the movie Maverick, starring Mel Gibson, I'm pretty sure he's a cowboy who gambles, and then there's like a lady also, and I'm just going off memory here from the poster from when I used to rent it at Bear Creek Video. And it looked like a good movie, with a lot of action and like comedic elements. So let's do like a virtual unboxing of sorts. If you could just imagine, here is the Maverick Laserdisc. I have opened the disc and woohoo, it's paper. Everything's gonna be paper here because I'm in full control of the situation. Slide that back in and set it down. Hopefully I can like Google image search what Maverick actually looks like so that you can see how badass it looks. Confidently I can give Maverick on Laserdisc a review of 7,500 out of 10 because the laughs and the action and the little bit of romance really makes it a stellar picture. It's totally fucking all the way worthy of putting on a Laserdisc, I assume. So, you know, one foot in front of the other, I'm definitely gonna get back into my home that has the rest of my Laserdiscs, has my AV setup, and my piece of shit, pure fucking evil roommate who started this whole spiral. And I'm not officially calling this a spiral per se, but I can see your perception out there assume this is a spiral, but I'm not gonna put that language on this. What I do know is that when I breathe in this spray paint, I can clearly envision how I'm gonna get my life back, my room back, and my Laserdiscs back. And I'm gonna do all of it. And I might commit murder. I mean, it won't go that far. My roommate is totally fucked, is more or less what I'm trying to say. I didn't mean the word murder. Let's strike that from the record. Nothing about murder. It's just he's simply fucked. And I will get all of my things back and be in full control. And back on top, and I'll have a roof, and I'll have sandwiches. I'll have access to sandwiches. And also paint. I think I'm going to continue doing this going forward because it's worked a lot for me. So, it's going to, it's just I'm kind of getting things going back in order. I think I'm here in Oregon. I'm going to walk my way back down south to where I live. And, it's just, we're going to be back in order and things are going to be fine, I mean, they're fine now, right? As you can see, leapfrog camera, 30-second clips. Everything's fine, but it'll be more fine when I'm back in my AV room with my collection. So thank you. I love you all very much. And once again, my roommate is totally fucked.
So Sonic 2, for me, this is my experience with it. It comes out of nowhere. Like, I'm just fucking doing what I do, watching Nick Arcade every single day, as you do. Shout out to my boy Fillmore, who I think watches. Hello, Phil. Love you very much. But they do this whole thing, and I remember vividly, like, I'm just like sitting there, with my fucking pop quiz, like doing the whole deal.
Yeah.
And then pop quiz, by the way, was a very toxic popcorn that was dyed color that was like a paint. It was like popcorn covered in a paint.
Lead-laced popcorn.
Yeah, it was not great. But anyway, I'm sitting there like dyeing my mouth purple because of that stuff. And then all of a sudden, Fillmore comes out and it's like, we've got really a special thing here today. And here's the debut of Sonic the Hedgehog 2. And I remember like just like being like, what the fuck? And then they show Tails for the first time.
Yeah.
They talk about the game being 2 players, all this stuff, and it's just kind of happening in like this magical time warp in my 8-year-old brain, being like, I can't believe this is doing it. And so for me, that hype immediately starts. And then Sega follows that up with the whole, which I think is the first example of this, but like they named the date that the game was coming out. It came out on a Tuesday, literally called Sonic Tuesday.
Yeah.
And there was a print campaign, there was commercials about it, like all this stuff that was just genius marketing leading out to this game. And then when Sonic 2 comes out, and it's fucking killer. It's to this day the best Sonic the Hedgehog game ever made, in my opinion. Everything about it is perfect. I think most Sonic perverts out there would say that like if it's not the very best, it's among the upper echelon of Sonic the Hedgehog games. But that was it for me. It was like, holy shit. Like, and being young, I think you brought that up with your son. Like, I think that's such a crucial part of hype. Like, the more you're into this hobby, the longer you're tenured, it's you do look at hype as like it's just marketing, and it's just this like
it's a negative.
Yeah, it's a negative, and it's like this like false thing that almost always just shits the bed. Like it never lines up exactly how you want it to. Sometimes it does. Your example of Elden Ring, I think, is great, and there's others that we'll talk about. But by and large, it's like this thing that brings you up only to be let down. But for me, that Sonic 2, the whole experience, everything that surrounded it, it was such a fucking marvelous time. And I wish we could have more of those, but that's just not the way it goes. Another example that I can think of, and I think you'll back up this sentiment, and same thing, I feel like Mortal Kombat, the home console release, saw exactly what Sonic 2 did, and then copied it beat for beat, step by step.
That I didn't have the Sonic example. I absolutely do have the Mortal Kombat example.
Anyone in our age group, we were all there for this. And Mortal Monday, September 13th, 1993.
like we remember it like the day that like Kennedy was assassinated.
Yeah. So I remember, I can tell you exactly how I first saw it. Like, and for me, it was like a 1-2 punch. Like the first time I ever saw that ad, which shows like the character select screen, and it says nothing can prepare you, and then Mortal Monday. Yeah. It was on the back cover of a WWF magazine. And on the front cover was the one and only, the hero of us all, Bret Hart. Not that pill-popping dick dancer, Shawn Michaels. Thank you very much. But an actual Canadian hero.
Focus, Brian, focus!
That's summed up, prima donna. But anyway, so for me, I saw that ad first. I didn't play Mortal Kombat in the arcade yet. I saw the ad, and then like a week or two later, I went to our local arcade, the immortal Yellow Brick Road that is obviously no longer with us. But then I saw the game in the arcade. So my experience was like, whoa, what is this? Nothing can prepare me. Oh, shit, I better get prepared. And then I go...
Mom! We gotta go! Get the keys!
Exactly.
And the camera.
We watched probably Jurassic Park at that little fucking theater, and then right next door was this arcade, and I saw Mortal Kombat for the first time. And so, boom, all the gears are turning. It's like, holy shit, here we go. Yeah. And yeah, sure as shit, like, that game on the Genesis delivered... On the Super Nintendo,
not so much.
Hype, deflation.
And I had a Super Nintendo, and man, that was a disappointment.
That was a big disappointment.
And I've told the story on the show before that seeing the original Mortal Kombat in the arcade on my 13th birthday in April of 1993, I thought was it both launched me into puberty, and also I thought we were all going to get arrested the first time I saw Sub-Zero's fatality happen on screen.
We were publicly watching Snuff at this point.
Right. Yeah. So the fact that was going to be available to me in the cozy confines of my bedroom was just like so exciting. Right up until the moment that Nintendo and Howard Lincoln decided gray sweat instead of blood was going to be their MO for the game. And fatalities that I didn't even remember what they did for some of the fatalities. I bet you do.
All of them were bullshit except for Sub-Zero's. And actually the Sub-Zero fatality in Super Nintendo, they actually Midway themselves actually used it in Mortal Kombat 2. It's 2 or 3, I can't remember. But in that one, instead of the head rip with the dangling spinal cord, he froze them and then he punched them and they shattered into a bunch of different pieces. Yeah. And that one was like, okay, like they actually spent the time on it. Yeah, obviously it's not as violent as like the cool shit. And I'm not defending this. I'm not defending it. But it was like they spent in that particular fatality, they spent the time on it and made it cool. Now the other ones are pretty dumb. Although Scorpions and Sonya's were the exact same. Like the whole like burn up into the skeleton thing. Yeah. They didn't change that at all.
Yeah.
But then like Kano's, instead of the heart rip, he like kicked through your chest. Oh, that's what which is like, okay, so like you put a foot through a chest and they're sweaty? I don't know about that, guys. It's a little dodgy.
I remember when that came out and I played it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I mean, this is Mortal Kombat, but... And then all of a sudden, like, I got mad at Nintendo. I was like, I gotta go to middle school tomorrow and, like, defend you guys for this crap.
It's my fucking job.
Yeah, Sega doesn't have this problem. Like, sure the lawyer in me, even at that time. I was like, I gotta go find a way to defend this. Yeah. This is just outrageous. Like,
we will not stand for this.
Yeah, so that was the first time I was crestfallen by the lack of... I am 13 years old. I can see a beheading and handle it, Nintendo. That's just...
You've at that point seen no fewer than 5 Jason movies.
At least.
You can absolutely handle this.
At least 5 Jason movies,
right. And it's funny too, like obviously like they being Nintendo realized the blunder because I think the Genesis version outsold them 3-1. Yeah. And on Mortal Kombat 2, I was like, oh, yeah, we did blood now, guys. We're so sorry. We're so sorry. Here's blood.
Yeah. And it was great.
Look, because the hype cycle started all over again.
Oh yeah, we have to talk about the hype cycle because you're right. We, as in the Nintendo people, are all jaded and mad at Nintendo over it. And then Mortal Kombat 2 hits the arcade. Again,
we're back on top. We're right back on top.
So, for myself, again, stories told in previous episodes, go watch our Rumors episode. I would carry around Mortal Kombat fatalities on my person, a list of them, because I was so excited for that game. I love that game so much. And then they announced that it's going to be for home consoles. And then they also announced that it's going to be a 1-to-1 port with all the fatalities and everything else. And then it comes out. And then it is. The hype cycle continues again. And this time we're winners at the casino. And I got like 2 solid years of amazing gameplay and fatalities.
Oh, it's the best.
Recorded VHS recorded fatalities.
So quick, I don't know if we ever told the story or not on the show. We may have, but I don't give a shit. I'm telling it again. So my sister and I would borrow your VHS tapes of you recorded music videos off of MTV. So we'd be like, "Fuck yeah, we love Bush. That's tight."
And Jewel,
obviously. Like we're not Philistines here. We respect art. But like. I remember watching them. My sister borrowed them to watch the music because we're white trash. We didn't have MTV. Like my parents were like, absolutely not. Do you want fucking cheese or do you want MTV? And they chose cheese. So we would borrow these tapes from you, and this is like 1994. And I remember at the end of the tape, like the last music video, which I think was like "Today" by Smashing Pumpkins. And then all of a sudden, like you see the static, and it's just like all these fatalities, and I was like, "Oh shit, yeah!"
So let me describe that VHS tape, which I think I still have. Oh man, if I do.
Oh my god, if you still have that, please let's digitize that.
Yeah, let's find it. Well, we need to for history, for posterity.
Oh, we'll do a watch along. We'll sit there and watch those fucking music videos and then those fatalities.
So I used to just record, this is back in the day where there was no YouTube.
Yeah.
So you would record anything interesting that you saw on TV so you could watch it back. And so I remember like Dylan breaking up with Brenda in 90210.
Oh man. So you're like, we got to get that. I need to watch that again and again.
This episode is on, record. And just like that clip, just the moment,
When you're recording history, that's what you're doing.
Zach and Slater getting into a fist fight and Saved by the Bell, I believe that is on there.
That's so fucking cool. What's the line that is, you were talking mess on me at the max?
It was like, you made me look like a jerk at the max.
That's what it is.
Well, that's what you are.
Yeah, and then the crowd, oh! And then there's a tussle.
Then I would try to get rare music videos. So Mazzy Star got in there for Fade Into You.
Absolutely.
Jewel, of course. So it's like you would get like fight between Slater and Zach, Mazzy Star video, Brenda breaking up with Dylan, Smashing Pumpkins.
These were expertly curated pieces of media. And if you have those tapes, don't hype me. Don't hype me on those tapes and not deliver.
One time, I playing NHL 94, I got 60 goals in a game once. I was like, wow, that's 1 goal per minute. That's incredible. So that I recorded all my statistics on it. It shows me going through. It's like, oh, and here's the crowd meter. And look, I scored so many, the crowd meter broke because the fans were so excited about my wonderful accomplishment. And then at the end of all that, a series of Mortal Kombat fatalities. Best VHS video ever.
Absolute best.
You do an episode where we go back to the sofas and then we have it playing the way that like
on the tiny little monitor. It'd be great. I used the same technique to make movies with Mario Paint. And I still do that, and I'm 40. So.
Well, and then the best part about all that is that, again, because of the era, you borrowed my tape to watch it. That was how you had access to all of this. Oh, what a time. We really, Brian, we really have lost something in this world when you have easy access to everything. You just go on YouTube and type something, it's right there.
Option fatigue is a real thing. It's a real thing.
It is kind of cool that the entire history of human knowledge is in my pocket every day, being carried around with me. But for everything that's been gained with that,
it's meaningless. All of it is meaningless.
It's a nihilism.
It's completely meaningless now.
We're back to nihilism. You lose something. You lose the magic of borrowing a tape from a friend and then getting exposed to wonderful snippets of Americana, a couple breaking up in a teenage sitcom, and then
a couple who one guy's like 38 years old, and then the actress is like 22. It's fine. Look, Dylan looked fine. So it's funny to go back to hype and Mortal Kombat because I think that franchise, especially the early games, what a symbiotic relationship with hype, delivery, and then so we've outlined 1 and 2.
Oh yeah, dude.
Mortal Kombat 3,
the hype cycle, it's coming down.
yeah, and so okay, the lead up to Mortal Kombat 3 is like I remember in magazines like they would talk about how like there's going to be this menu, like a versus screen menu, and you're going to put in codes, and then you go and you see the Mortal Kombat movie, and in the credits of the movie are these little symbols that you're supposed to fucking write down, because when the game comes out in the arcade, you can put in these codes and all this shit. They had all the giant print ad, all that stuff, and then Mortal Kombat 3 comes out, and what a disappointment.
New combo system, Brian.
And it sucks. It's not fun. It's the term dialogue combo for fighting game fans like me. That's where where it comes from. Like Mortal Kombat 3. I'm sorry. Like I'll give you Ultimate 3. They corrected a lot of the problems. It's a better game. But vanilla Mortal Kombat 3 sucks. It is the definition of a 2.5 or a 3 out of 5 game. That's what it is. And
it's coming out right around the time that Killer Instinct was around.
Yeah.
You and I both love that game.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about that game. So Mortal Kombat 3 looked especially bad coming off of the high of Mortal Kombat 2, but also compared against its contemporaries in the arcade at the time, which was Killer Instinct.
Yes, and you have like Street Fighter 2.9 or whatever they're up to at that point in time, and then SNK. I mean, like the point is, Mortal Kombat had the table set. Like they had these 2 games that were fucking cultural touchstones. They had that fucking movie, which everyone saw that movie multiple times because it's a wonderful movie. Yeah. Still is a wonderful movie. Yeah. 90 minutes of just straight, right in your fucking face action, with terrible CG that has not aged well at all. But I love it. But they have all this money in this hype train, and then like they can do no wrong, and then the game comes out and it gets a popcorn fart. I remember in reading GamePro at the time. Like it got really bad. Well, not like terrible reviews, but you're expecting it to be 5s across the board.
That's the hype problem.
Exactly. Yeah. And it just wasn't that. And they had to go back and make another version of the game to fix their fucking issue, and that's what Ultimate Mortal Kombat was. And then Trilogy comes out, kind of also sucks. So, but that's the Mortal Kombat story. And it's interesting though about how interwoven into that series hype is. And Street Fighter, I feel, as its obvious biggest contemporary, like it was more of like an even line, like where there was a huge amount of hype when it first came out, and then just kind of stayed there as the king of the hill, daddy, right on top.
It's because they never released Street Fighter 3, so you always had to temper your expectations against.
Well, they didn't release it at the time when they should have. They released it when they did, and all that.
But because they didn't, when they announced like, oh, this is Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition, it's like, it's cool, there's new stuff, but it's not Street Fighter 3 the way there was a Mortal Kombat 3 where you're expecting the next revolution in fighting games.
See, but here's the argument I'm going to make about that, and as it kind of pertains to hype. Like, I think Capcom... I think back then, it's easy to say, and I think we all felt this way, it's like, okay, enough Street Fighter 2s. Like, there was definitely a fatigue about it.
Oh, by the time they got to, it was Championship Edition, Turbo, and then was the third one?
Super Turbo.
Super, oh my God.
Well, okay, so if you want to, all of the arcade, this is all of the arcade ones. There's Street Fighter 2 World Warrior, then there's Championship Edition, then there's Hyper Fighting, then they came out with another version of Hyper Fighting in the arcade, which is also called Turbo. Then on Super Nintendo, Turbo comes out. On the Genesis, Special Championship Edition comes out, and so on and so forth. And then you have the Supers, and then Super Turbo is where it ended, and then they took a couple years off, and then within that time frame is the Alpha series, which really, Street Fighter Alpha easily could have been Street Fighter 3. They easily could have called it Street Fighter 3. It looked different, it had new characters, like it was Street Fighter 3, but they called it Street Fighter Alpha for whatever fucking reason.
And I remember kind of being turned off by that, because at that point I was like 15, maybe 16. Okay. And I was like, oh, a new Street Fighter game, but they're calling it Alpha. Like, what the hell does that mean? What's an Alpha?
Yeah. I 100% remember being at Staters, reading the magazine, what the fuck is Street Fighter Alpha? Like, I don't know what that means.
If they just said Street Fighter 3, it's like, oh, that's the next Street Fighter.
But again, I bring all this stuff up to say, like, now in hindsight, when you look at all the cards on the table of everything that Capcom did in that era, like, I do kind of think that, and I am biased here because I'm a diehard Street Fighter fan, but I think it's kind of smart what they did, because it's like, from a business standpoint, they're like making money each time they double dip. Like, they're making money doing that.
Yeah.
And like they don't have to reiterate on the hardware. They do obviously with Alpha. It goes into a new platform, CPS2. But all those CPS1 games that they just kept re-releasing, and they have to like compete against pirates. Like, a lot of the features that were implemented in Hyper Fighting came from seeing what pirates were doing. Like, they're the ones that made the game play faster. They're the ones that added like air fireballs and all that other shit. And so Capcom was like, well, actually, these are kind of cool ideas. So we're going to steal them from the people that stole from us. And we're going to make money off this shit. And so I think all that stuff is kind of ingenious. At the time, I definitely was in the camp of like, let's count to 3 guys. But in hindsight, I think what they did, and especially when you compare it to Mortal Kombat, that did very neatly and go sequentially, like when they get up to 3 and everything is there for them. Like, you can't understate the success of Mortal Kombat 1, 2, and the movie. Then 3 comes out, and then the sequel to the movie comes out, Annihilation, which is unwatchable. It is a terrible movie.
One of the worst movies I've ever seen in my entire life, ever.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really in the bottom 3, probably.
It is.
And I saw it in theaters, and it was...
I saw it in theaters as well, and I remember just being like having to like lie to myself while I was watching it. Be like, no, I'm having a good time. Yeah, I'm having a pretty good time. And then of course I wasn't.
on the hype meter, that was me and Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, pod racing. This is
oh, buddy. Hype. Hype and Star Wars Episode 1. Let's put a pin in this because we're going to come back. We're going to do a part 2 on hype because I think we can keep going here.
All right.
And we are probably going to start that conversation, even though it's not directly video game related.
It's definitely hype related.
It's hype related for sure. So come on back. If I haven't said it already, which I know I haven't, check us out on Spotify. We're there. Like, subscribe, leave comments, all that good shit. If you have an idea, a suggestion for an episode even, throw those our way because we need more ideas. Also buy us cameras. Thank you very much for watching.